9:43 now. The government is looking to reform leasehold property laws in England and Wales, a strange system which dates back to 1066. They're launching a consultation to look at losing the ban which stops leaseholders buying their freehold if part of the building is being used for commercial purchase. They also want to make it easier for leaseholders in flats to get together and bring the building into common ownership. Michael Gove wants to favour owners, it's reported in the Times, not dukes and developers. Leaseholds famously can be quite difficult. Ground rents and service charges can run up massive bills. This week, a law was passed which bans property developers from charging ground rent on new builds. Anna Scoffin is one person who knows all too well the pitfalls of leaseholds. She joins us now with her son, Harry Scoffin, who's a journalist for the charity Leasehold Knowledge Partnership. Morning, both.
Hi there.
Good morning.
Thanks very much for your time. Anna, can I start with you? Can you just lay out your situation for us and how you found yourself paying it's absolutely thousands of pounds, even though you own your place?
Yeah, I mean, basically, my service charges have gone up by 61% in 6 years. I didn't really understand leasehold when we purchased the property in 2011. I'm now paying 26,500 approximately for service charges, and that's without utilities and car park, the car park facility. I have to say that the building looks beautiful from the outside.
Well, you'd hope it did for 26k each.
You would. I mean, it looks iconic, and I'm sure it is iconic. But I have to say that it's a no-frills block. There is no pool, there is no gym, there is no cinema room, business lounge, there isn't a garden. And in my opinion, in my humble opinion, it is a very rundown building. It looks rundown, and it is rundown. I'm embarrassed about the lifts. They look shabby. There's graffiti. My windows are often dirty. The reception room, the reception hall, is dated, soulless,
and yet you're paying all this money, and I just wonder.
I'm paying all this money, and I've learnt a little bit about leaseholds. Because we are above the Marriott Hotel, there is something called the 25% rule, which I didn't know about. And that means to say that when a building has 25% of its space taken up by commercial premises, it means that the complete power and control goes to the freeholder. And often those freeholders are remote. And in my situation, the freeholder lives in Monaco. And what I'm saying is, how can a remote freeholder, even when a managing agent, and I must go further on this, works for that freeholder, how can they care about my building, about my apartment, about my home, which is the biggest investment of my life?
And that's why, and as you explained, so your fees have gone up 61% in 6 years. They've jacked those up. And Harry, it's the case that lots of people are also in a similar situation to this.
Absolutely. And we're looking at these reforms and they look amazing, but obviously there's going to be huge fight back from the sector. So we're looking at about 6.5 million flats and leasehold houses across England and Wales. We're looking at 5.3 million flats in England and Wales, so if you take out the houses. And what's interesting about this leasehold is it goes back to the sort of genesis of democracy. So enfranchisement, it's about giving people the vote, universal suffrage to enfranchise. Even Rudolph Churchill, Churchill's father, basically, he tried to bring in an enfranchisement bill in 1884. And unfortunately, that got stopped because the Prime Minister, Lord Salisbury at the time, was a big freeholder. So he didn't want that to happen. And even Margaret Thatcher, she knew that leasehold was a racket. She tried to bring in common hold. John Major tried to bring it in. Sadly, they got distracted by a thing called Europe. New Labour eventually brought it in. But because the legislation was poorly drafted, and also they didn't make it mandatory on new builds, it's never taken off.
Well, thanks for giving us your view on this. That's Anna and Harry Scoffin. Let's bring in Kunle Barker, who's a property expert. Kunle, thanks for your time this morning. How big a problem is this, and how much do these proposals which the government have put out in terms of, stopping leaseholders buying, getting rid of the ban, stopping leaseholders buying their freehold if there's a commercial purpose in the building, and also making it easier for leaseholders who are in flats to sort of gang together and bring the building into common ownership. How likely is this to actually address the problem which Harry and Anna laid out there?
Well, it goes some of the way. And with a lot of the things that the government do, it doesn't really address the real problem. And the real problem is that ostensibly this system of ownership and leasing is archaic and unfair in a way that, you know, most other things in our country aren't. And we're one of the only countries that do this. It was, as you said earlier, it was something that was, you know, that it dates back to 1066 with William the Conqueror as a way for him to force noblemen or get noblemen to supply him with armies so that they could wage war. And that is how out of date this system is. The recent changes are good, and there have been recent changes to leasehold and freehold legislation, you know, over the last decade or so, and they've all made small changes for the better. But really, it needs to end. It needs to go because it doesn't work. It's not fit for purpose. It's complicated. It's expensive. It's time consuming, and for many people, even to try and, you know, enfranchise themselves, so to exercise their right to manage.
And just finally, Kuhn, I just wonder how Anna had a sort of quite an extreme case there of paying 26k a year in service fees on her leasehold. There are hundreds of thousands of people around the land who have got who are on leaseholds. Not all of them are going to be out of pocket to that extent, are they?
But not quite. That seems like quite an extreme example. But the point is that they don't represent the lease fees that you pay on your flat will not represent value for money. So they will not represent value for money in the work that you're getting done. They will not represent value for money in the management fees that the agents charge, or the managing agents who manage on behalf of the freeholders. And at the end of the day, everybody knows that if they all got together as a community, as a group of people, that they would be able to make sure that their building was maintained and kept up to scratch for much cheaper. Some people being charged like £4,000, £5,000, £6,000 effectively for an insurance policy and for cutting grass. It's ridiculous.
Kuhnle, thanks very much for your time this morning. Kuhnle Barker there, property expert. We also heard from Anna and Harry Scoffin. You can read more about Anna's particularly expensive experience of this in the Times today, and maybe you're also one of the people affected by this. Studio@times.radio if you want to get in touch with us.
You're listening to Breakfast on Times Radio.